Have you ever noticed that the people who seem the strongest are often the ones carrying the heaviest burdens? The friend everyone leans on is secretly falling apart. The leader who holds the room together has cried themselves to sleep more nights than they can count. The person with the brightest smile has walked through the darkest valleys. And if you're that person, if you've been tested again and again, pushed to your absolute limit, broken down and rebuilt more times than you can remember, you've probably asked yourself, why me? Why does it feel like I'm always the one going through hell? Here's what I want you to consider today. What if it's not punishment? What if it's not bad luck or karma or the universe being cruel? What if the hardest storms are sent to the tallest trees? What if the people who are tested the most are tested because they're capable of becoming something extraordinary? What if your pain isn't random, it's purposeful? What if every fire you've walked through wasn't meant to destroy you, but to forge you into something unbreakable? Today, I want to talk about why the strongest are tested the most, and why that's not a curse. It's part of the plan. Let me take you on a journey through this truth, because by the end, I want you to see your struggles differently, not as evidence that you're cursed, but as proof that you're being prepared for something greater than you can imagine right now. Let's start here. What does it mean to be tested? I'm not talking about a math exam or a job interview. I'm talking about the kind of testing that shakes you to your core, the kind that strips away everything you thought you knew about yourself, the kind that happens in the dark, when you lose someone you love, when your body betrays you, when your dreams collapse, when you're standing in the wreckage of your life, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. That's a test. And here's the thing most people don't realize. The universe doesn't test the weak. It doesn't waste its time breaking people who are already fragile. No, it tests the strong. It forges the ones who have the capacity to carry something greater. It pushes the ones who can handle the weight. Think about it like this. Imagine two people. One has lived a comfortable life, never faced real loss, never been truly challenged. The other has been through hell, lost everything, rebuilt from nothing, had their heart shattered, and learned to stitch it back together with their own hands. Now, which one do you trust to lead you through a crisis? Which one do you turn to when your world is falling apart? Which one has the wisdom, the depth, the strength to hold space for your pain? The one who's been tested, the one who's walked through fire and came out the other side. Because testing doesn't weaken you, it builds you. Every storm you survive makes you more capable of weathering the next one. Every collapse teaches you how to rebuild. Every loss teaches you what truly matters. The strongest are tested the most because they're being prepared for something the rest of us can't even imagine yet. Let me give you an example, a hypothetical one, but one that plays out in real life all the time. Imagine a woman destined to lead thousands, to inspire, to heal, to change lives, but she's not ready yet. She's talented, yes, charismatic, smart, but she lacks something crucial. She lacks depth. She lacks the kind of wisdom that only comes from suffering. So life tests her. She loses her business. Her marriage falls apart. She faces a health crisis that brings her to her knees. For years, she's in the wilderness, broken, confused, wondering why God or the universe or fate has abandoned her. But something is happening beneath the surface. She's learning humility. She's learning compassion. She's learning that control is an illusion and surrender is strength. She's being emptied of everything superficial so she can be filled with something real. And then, years later, she emerges. Not the same person, someone entirely new. Someone who can look another suffering soul in the eyes and say, I know, I've been there. And I promise you, you will survive this. That woman goes on to touch thousands of lives. not despite her testing, but because of it. Her credentials weren't her degrees or her achievements. Her credentials were her scars. The strongest are tested the most because they're being forged into something the world desperately needs. This is part of the plan. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but I am damaged. I am broken. How is that part of any plan? And here's what I need you to hear. Damage doesn't destroy, it reshapes. There's an old Japanese art form called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. When a bowl shatters, instead of throwing it away or hiding the cracks, they fill them with precious metal. The bowl becomes more beautiful, more valuable, more unique because it was broken. The cracks aren't flaws, they're features. They're what make the piece one of a kind. They're what catch the light. That's what your pain is doing to you. Every crack, every wound, every place you've been shattered, those aren't flaws. They're where the light gets in. They're where your humanity shows through. They're what make you real, relatable, powerful. The poet Rumi said it perfectly. Your wound is where the light enters you. You think your brokenness makes you weak? No, it makes you luminous. It makes you someone who can sit with another person's pain without flinching. It makes you someone who understands what it means to suffer and to survive. I want you to imagine a vessel, a clay pot, perfect, smooth, flawless. It sits on a shelf, admired for its perfection, but it holds nothing. It gives nothing. It's just pretty. Now imagine another vessel. This one is cracked, scarred, worn from use. And when you fill it with water, the water seeps through the cracks. And wherever it goes, it brings life. Plants grow, parched ground softens, life springs up in unexpected places. Which vessel is more valuable? The perfect one that holds everything in, or the broken one that lets light and life pour through? You are the cracked vessel, and your cracks, they're not your curse. They're your gift. They're how you pour into others. They're how you bring life to dry places. They're how you shine. Damage doesn't disqualify you. It transforms you. The cracked vessel holds more light than the perfect one ever could. This is part of the plan. Here's another reason the strongest are tested. Testing breaks the ego. When life is easy, when everything goes your way, when you're on top of the world, it's easy to believe you did it all yourself. It's easy to get arrogant, closed off, self-sufficient. It's easy to forget that you're human. It's easy to stop listening, stop learning, stop growing. But testing strips all that away. When you're on your knees, when you've lost everything, when you're begging for help, there's no room for ego. There's only humility. There's only openness. There's only the raw, honest truth. I can't do this alone. And that humility, that's where real connection begins. That's where authentic leadership is born. That's where love can finally flow. Let me tell you a story. There was once a proud king who believed he was chosen by the gods. He ruled with an iron fist, never listened to anyone, never showed weakness. His word was law. His power was absolute. And in his mind, he deserved all of it. One day, a plague swept through his kingdom. His people suffered. Children died in the streets. The elderly collapsed in their homes. His wealth couldn't save them. His power couldn't stop it. His armies were useless against an invisible enemy. And slowly, the king realized he was helpless. In his desperation, he left his palace in disguise and wandered into the countryside. There, in a small village, he met a humble shepherd who had lost everything to the plague. His wife, his children, his entire flock, everything. But the shepherd wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He sat by a small fire, sharing the last of his bread with strangers who passed by. The king, still in disguise, sat down beside him and asked, "How can you be at peace when you've lost everything? How can you smile when the gods have taken all that you loved?" The shepherd looked at the fire for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I've learned that nothing was ever mine to begin with. My wife, my children, my sheep. They were gifts, temporary gifts. All I ever truly have is this moment. And in this moment, I have this bread, I have this fire, I have you, a stranger sitting beside me. And that is enough." He paused, then added, "The plague didn't take everything from me. It took everything I was holding on to, and when my hands were finally empty, I realized they were free. Free to give, free to receive, free to love without grasping." The king sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. He had spent his entire life building walls, accumulating power, demanding control, and in one moment, a man who had nothing taught him everything. The king returned to his palace a changed man. He opened the granaries and distributed food freely. He sat with the sick and dying, holding their hands. He listened to his advisors instead of commanding them. He stopped ruling over his people and started serving with them. And slowly, the kingdom began to heal, not because of his power, but because of his humility. Testing breaks you open. It cracks the shell of pride and control. It shatters the illusion that you're self-sufficient. And what's left? A heart that's soft enough to love, hands that are open enough to give, a soul that's humble enough to receive. The strongest are tested the most because the universe needs them to be open, humble, human, real. Ego is a barrier to connection. Pride is a wall between you and everyone else. But humility? Humility is a bridge. It's an invitation. It's how you become someone others can actually reach. This is part of the plan. If we look at this through a spiritual lens, the pattern becomes even clearer. The universe doesn't want perfect vessels. It wants cracked ones. Look at the people throughout history who changed the world, the ones who moved mountains, the ones whose names we still remember thousands of years later. Moses, a stuttering murderer with a speech impediment who led an entire nation out of slavery. God could have chosen anyone, an eloquent priest, a powerful warrior, a respected scholar. But no, he chose the broken one, the one who said, "I can't speak well, send someone else." David, a shepherd boy, the youngest and least impressive of his brothers, overlooked by everyone, who became the greatest king in Israel's history. Not because he was perfect. He was an adulterer, a murderer, a deeply flawed man, but he was humble. He was broken. He knew his need for grace. Paul, a violent persecutor who hunted down and killed the very people whose message he would later spread. God didn't choose the faithful disciples. He chose the enemy, the one who needed the most radical transformation. And Paul spent the rest of his life saying, "I am the worst of sinners." And that's why God's grace is so powerful. Mother Teresa, a woman who felt spiritually abandoned, who experienced what she called the dark night of the soul for decades. She served the poorest of the poor while feeling utterly empty inside. And yet, she's remembered as one of the most faithful servants in modern history. Every single one of them was broken. Every single one of them was tested beyond measure. Every single one of them walked through hell. And every single one of them said the same thing: "My weakness became my strength." Their tests weren't obstacles to their purpose. Their tests were their credentials. Because here's the truth. When you've walked through hell, you don't take heaven for granted. When you've been shattered, you handle other people's brokenness with care. When you've been humbled, you lead with grace. When you've been lost, you can guide others through the wilderness. The universe doesn't send its hardest battles to its weakest warriors. It sends them to the ones who can transform that pain into purpose. The ones who can take their scars and turn them into maps for others who are lost. Your test isn't random, it's sacred. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. Think about it this way. If you were building an army, would you send your best soldiers to the easiest battles? No. You'd send them to the front lines, to the hardest fights, to the places where only the strongest can survive. That's what's happening to you. You're not in the easy battle because you're not meant for easy things. You're in the hard battle because you're capable of winning it. And when you do, you'll be unstoppable. This is part of the plan. So what does this transformation actually look like? How do you go from broken to unbreakable, from tested to triumphant? It's not about recovering and going back to who you were before. No, it's about evolution. It's about becoming someone new, someone deeper, someone stronger in ways you never imagined. Think of it like this. When you're learning to float in water, the hardest part is letting go. Your instinct is to fight, to thrash, to try to control your body, control the water, control everything. And what happens? You sink. But the moment you stop fighting, the moment you relax your muscles, release your breath, and trust the water, you rise. Effortlessly, you float. That's what surrender is. Surrender isn't giving up. It's not weakness. It's not defeat. Surrender is letting go of the illusion that you were ever in control in the first place. It's trusting that the process, as painful, as confusing, as unbearable as it is taking you somewhere you need to go. The fire doesn't ask your permission. The storm doesn't wait for you to be ready. The loss doesn't care if you're prepared. It just happens. And you have a choice. Fight it and be consumed by it, or surrender to it and let it reshape you. I'm not saying it's easy. God knows it's not easy. Surrender feels like dying. It feels like losing everything that matters. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff and stepping off into darkness. But here's what I've learned, and what every person who's been through hell will tell you. On the other side of surrender is freedom. When you stop trying to control everything, you stop exhausting yourself. When you stop clinging to how things should be, you can finally see how things are. When you stop resisting the process, you can finally flow with it. And somewhere in that flow, you transform, not into who you were before. That person is gone. You can't go back. The fire burned them away. But you become someone better, someone wiser, someone who knows things that can't be taught in books, someone who carries a quiet strength that doesn't need to prove itself. You become the person who can sit in a room full of chaos and remain calm, the person who can look suffering in the face and not flinch, the person who can lose everything and still find reasons to smile, the person others gravitate toward because they feel safe with you. That's transformation. And here's the paradox. Surrender is the ultimate strength. It takes more courage to let go than to hold on. It takes more power to trust than to control. It takes more faith to release than to grasp. The strongest are tested the most because they're the ones capable of surrendering and being reborn. This is part of the plan. Here's another truth about strength. Rigid things break. Flexible things endure. Imagine an old oak tree and a young bamboo stalk standing side by side in the middle of a hurricane. The oak, strong, solid, thick, unmovable, seems invincible. Its roots go deep. Its trunk is massive. It survived 100 storms before. But this storm is different. The winds are too strong. The oak refuses to bend. It stands firm, it fights the wind, and in the end, it snaps in half, crashes to the ground, dead. Now look at the bamboo. Thin, fragile looking. Seems like it should break first, but watch what it does. It bends all the way down. Its top touches the ground. The wind screams past it. The storm rages. And when it's over, the bamboo springs back up. Not even damaged, still alive, still standing. That's resilience. You think strength means never bending. You think it means standing firm no matter what? No. Real strength is knowing how to bend. Real strength is adapting, adjusting, flowing with the chaos instead of resisting it. When you've been tested over and over, you learn this. You stop trying to control everything. You stop demanding that life go according to your plan. You stop clinging to outcomes you can't guarantee. You learn to bend, to flow, to let the storm pass through you instead of trying to fight it. You bend, so you don't break. And when it's over, you rise again. A little scarred, yes. A little worn, maybe. But still standing, still breathing, still here. I've seen this in people. The ones who've been through multiple traumas, multiple losses, multiple collapses. At first, they try to fight it. They try to stay rigid, stay strong in the old way. But life keeps breaking them, keeps testing them, and eventually, they learn, they soften, not in a weak way, in a wise way. They learn that flexibility is survival, that adaptation is strength, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is bend. They become like water. Bruce Lee said it. Be like water, my friend. Water doesn't fight the rock. It flows around it. It adapts to every container. It's soft, but it can wear down mountains. The strongest are tested the most because they're learning to be flexible, to be resilient, to survive what would destroy most people, to bend without breaking, to flow without losing themselves. This is part of the plan. Here's maybe the most beautiful part of all this. Your pain becomes your bridge to others. When you've suffered, when you've been tested, when you've walked through the valley of the shadow of death, you develop something most people never have: deep, bone-level empathy. You don't just understand suffering intellectually. You don't just sympathize from a distance. You know it. You've tasted it. You've lived in it. You've breathed it. And because of that, you can sit with someone else's pain without trying to fix it, without offering empty platitudes, without turning away in discomfort. There's a power in that, a sacred power. Let me tell you about something I heard once. There was a man who lost his young daughter to cancer. She was 7 years old, his whole world. And when she died, something in him died too. For 2 years, he couldn't function, couldn't work, couldn't smile, could barely get out of bed. The grief was so heavy it felt like drowning every single day. His friends didn't know what to do with him. They tried to help at first, brought meals, offered advice, told him she's in a better place now, and time heals all wounds, and all the things people say when they don't know what else to say. But none of it helped because they didn't know. They hadn't lost a child. They couldn't understand. Eventually, most of them drifted away. They had their own lives, their own problems, and he was just too much, too sad, too broken, too heavy. But then something shifted. He started volunteering at a children's hospital, specifically in the oncology ward. He would sit with parents whose kids were dying. He didn't say much. Sometimes he didn't say anything at all. He just sat, held their hands, cried with them, stayed present while they fell apart. And those parents said the same thing over and over. He's the only one who truly understands. Everyone else tries to make us feel better. He just lets us feel. His pain became his gift. His wound became his ministry. His greatest loss became his greatest offering. Only the wounded healer truly heals. See, when you've been broken, you understand brokenness. When you've been lost, you understand lostness. When you've wanted to give up, you understand hopelessness. And you can sit in those places with other people without panicking, without trying to rush them through it, without needing them to be okay, so you can be comfortable. You become a safe place, a refuge, someone who doesn't flinch at the darkness because you've lived in it yourself. The world is full of people who are suffering in silence, people who are holding it together on the outside while falling apart on the inside, people who feel alone in their pain because no one around them gets it. And then they meet you, someone who's been there, someone whose eyes say, I know, I've been there. You're not alone. And something in them softens, opens, begins to heal. Your test isn't just for you. It's for every person you'll touch after, every life you'll impact, every soul you'll help carry through their own storm. The strongest are tested the most because the world needs people who know, who've been through it, who can hold space for the unbearable and not flinch. This is part of the plan. Now, here's where it gets real. Here's where we have to be honest about something uncomfortable. Not everyone who's tested becomes stronger. Not everyone transforms. Not everyone emerges from the fire as gold. Some people go through hell and come out bitter, angry, hardened, closed off. They've suffered, yes. They've been tested, absolutely. But instead of learning from it, they let it poison them. So what's the difference? Why do some people grow through their pain while others are destroyed by it? There are two types of people in the world, learners and resistors. Learners ask, what is this teaching me? What am I supposed to learn from this? How can I grow through this? What is this pain revealing about me, about life, about what matters? They lean into the pain instead of running from it. They search for meaning instead of drowning in meaninglessness. They look for the lesson instead of just cursing the experience. And slowly, painfully, through tears and screaming and more dark nights than they can count, they become wise. They don't just survive, they evolve. Resistors ask, why me? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Who can I blame? How is this fair? They fight the lesson. They cling to anger, to bitterness, to victimhood. They build walls instead of bridges. They close off instead of opening up. And slowly, painfully, through years of resentment and rage, they become smaller, harder, colder. They survive, but they're not really alive anymore. Same fire, same test, same pain. One becomes steel, one becomes ash. The difference isn't the test, it's the response. Let me be clear, I'm not saying you should be grateful for your trauma. I'm not saying you should thank the universe for breaking you. I'm not saying you shouldn't be angry or sad or devastated. Feel all of it. Scream, rage, grieve, let yourself fall apart. But then, at some point, you have to make a choice. Are you going to let this destroy you? Or are you going to let it refine you? Are you going to spend the rest of your life asking, why me? Or are you going to ask, what now? Are you going to let your pain define you? Or are you going to let it develop you? The learners choose growth, not because it's easy, not because it feels good, but because they refuse to let their suffering be meaningless. They refuse to waste their pain. They say, if I'm going through this hell, I'm coming out the other side with something valuable. Wisdom, compassion, strength, something. The strongest are tested the most because they're the ones who choose to learn. They're the ones who refuse to waste their pain. They're the ones who transform their wounds into wisdom. This is part of the plan. Let's talk about vulnerability for a moment, because this might be the most misunderstood concept in the world. The world teaches us that strength means armor, walls, never letting anyone see you sweat, never showing weakness, never asking for help, never admitting you're struggling. Be tough, be hard, be invulnerable. But the truth, the real truth, the strongest people are the most broken open. There's a line from Scripture that says, "My power is made perfect in weakness." And for years, I didn't understand that. It sounded like a contradiction. How can power come from weakness? How can strength come from vulnerability? But now I get it. When you're vulnerable, when you're honest about your struggles, when you stop pretending you have it all together, you become real. And real is powerful. Real is magnetic. Real is what people actually need. Nobody connects with perfection. Nobody is inspired by someone who seems to have it all figured out. We connect with humanity, with struggle, with honesty, with someone who says, "I don't have all the answers. I'm scared too. I'm broken too. But I'm still here, still fighting, still believing." That's power. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. It takes more strength to say, "I need help," than to suffer in silence. It takes more power to cry in front of someone than to hide your tears. It takes more bravery to show your scars than to cover them up. Vulnerability is the doorway to connection, to healing, to love, to everything that actually matters. I've seen this play out so many times. The most impactful leaders, the most beloved teachers, the most trusted friends, they're not the ones who seem perfect. They're the ones who are honest, the ones who share their struggles, the ones who say, "I've been where you are. I know how hard this is." Their vulnerability gives others permission to be vulnerable too. Their honesty creates safety. Their brokenness becomes a beacon. The strongest are tested the most because they're being trained to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be real, to stop hiding behind masks and start living. Because here's what happens when you try to be invulnerable. You end up alone. You end up isolated. You end up disconnected from everyone around you because nobody can actually reach you through your armor. But when you're vulnerable, when you let people see your cracks, they can finally reach you, touch you, love you, help you, and you can do the same for them. This is part of the plan. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're being tested right now, if you're going through hell, if you feel like you're being broken down piece by piece, listen to me. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You're not being destroyed, you're being forged. The universe doesn't waste fire on people who can't handle it. It doesn't send the hardest storms to the weakest trees. It doesn't test people who aren't capable of transformation. It tests the strong because they're the ones who can become something extraordinary. Your pain has purpose. Your struggle has meaning. Your wounds are becoming your wisdom. Your tests are becoming your testimony. Your breaking is becoming your breakthrough. You're not broken. You're being built. I know it doesn't feel like that right now. I know it feels like you're dying, like you're losing everything, like you'll never be whole again. But one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, you'll look back and see it. You'll see how every test, every loss, every moment of unbearable pain was shaping you into someone who could carry light into dark places, someone who could heal because they've been wounded, someone who could lead because they've been lost, someone who could love because they've known what it's like to feel unloved. You'll see that nothing was wasted, nothing was random, nothing was meaningless. It was all part of the plan. And you were chosen for this. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being prepared, because the universe knew you could handle it, because you have something in you that most people don't, the capacity to transform pain into purpose. So today, I want you to do something simple but powerful. In the comments below, I want you to write this. This is forging me. Name the test you're facing. Write it down. Claim it. Own it. And remind yourself, you're not a victim. You're a warrior in training. You're not being destroyed. You're being forged. Say it out loud if you need to. This is forging me, because it is. Every moment of pain, every sleepless night, every tear, every loss, every time you wanted to give up but didn't. It's all forging you into something unbreakable. The strongest trees grow in the strongest winds. The brightest lights shine in the darkest nights. The most beautiful vessels are the ones that have been broken and repaired with gold. And you, my friend, you're going to be magnificent, not despite what you've been through, because of it. This is part of the plan, and one day you'll be so grateful it was. The strongest trees grow through the hardest storms.